Tony was an apology, was he? He's not on the committee, so we don't have to. Okay, so no apologies. We'll move to any extraordinary business. No declarations of interest. Okay, confirmation of the minutes of the 14th of the 2nd. Minutes are there on page 3 and 4. If there are no alterations or amendments, would someone like to move, please? Councillor Wilson, Councillor Brahm, all those in favour? Carried, thank you. Okay, we move into item 5, the EA Networks Pool Safe Audit Outcome. Welcome to the table, ladies.
Thank you. I'd just like to introduce Ellen Nicol. She is our Recreation Services Manager, so is in charge of the pool space, stadium space, and also the events bookings in those 2 locations.
Fantastic. Welcome to our environment.
Thank you.
So I'll just hand the floor over to you to go through it. How do you want to do this? Just go through? It's quite a document.
We're happy to answer any questions that you have. We take it as a read report, and yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to throw in, there's a lot of achieved, it's just everything's achieved. So do you have a template for training the lifeguards and everybody to come up with that outcome? Because, it's obviously everything is pretty much achieved.
Yeah, so for training lifeguards in particular, we kind of stick to the PLSA and PLPC training guidelines to get people qualified. As well as doing spot training for any issues that we identify throughout the year as well.
So the achieved comments, this is the provider pool safe have gone through, and they don't give you a percentage point. It's either a pass or a fail, and achieved or not achieved for the audit report as Appendix 1.
Any further questions at all? Because it does look like a very good outcome for the complex, so that's excellent. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Just a question for a lifeguard, if they get all the right paperwork, how long does it work? Is it a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Or how often do they have to go through it?
So the qualification is valid for 2 years, and then they have to re-register.
Okay, so that's only a registration, so you don't have to train them again.
They do have to meet certain criteria to pass the re-registration. If they've demonstrated, so the assessor, if they can show that they've demonstrated certain skills within the last 3 months, they can use those. Otherwise, they have to complete scenarios.
Okay.
And the fitness component is ongoing.
Yeah.
So you can't pass this one test at the start and then let your fitness lapse and
I understand
not be able to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. One of the page 17, pool, spas, saunas, they don't have to have, you've got to have a sign saying it's not supervised. Do we supervise our spa pool at EA Networks?
Yes, that's just for private saunas, spas that aren't in the lifeguarded areas. So all of our pools are lifeguarded, including the learn to swim.
Oh, it doesn't say, it just says spas, saunas, steam rooms and private pools, as if private pools was an additional category. Should it be private pools with sauna stars? Is it
so
saunas and spas and stuff?
I guess the form is the standard pool safe form. So yes, our pool is supervised because it's right next to
so it's supervised but because it had basically incidentally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It potentially wouldn't have to be, and there'd be some saunas and spas.
So we're not paying for an extra person to supervise the
no,
spa pool?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, once again, congratulations on the report. It's good effort, obviously. So, page 5, councillors, there's a recommendation there. Councillor Brown, you're moving. Councillor McMillan seconding.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Put the motion, all those in favour? Carried, thank you. Right. What page are we going to? Page 20.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, did you want to jump to item 6, miss item 6 and do it later, or did you want to do item 7? Item 6 is it's the EA financial report, and it was a separate appendix
It was
to
a
Stella.
separate attachment on
Yes.
Stella.
So I'm
Yes.
happy to take it any time.
We can, yeah, no, we'll do that now while we're there. So that got sent to us separately. Thank you. It's easier to read than sort of. So everyone's got that on Stella, came as a separate. Okay. Any questions? Once again, tested my eyesight, but.
know how to use the.
Yes, yeah. Yep. No questions? Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I just highlight for councillors' information one of the key things that I noticed when I saw this report, and while at this stage of the year 53% of our income is less than our budget, the operating expenditure, the variable costs are only 50%. So again, I think what we're seeing here is that the management of the EA Network Centre is responding to the circumstances that they face and are managing costs within the limitations of the income extremely well, and council should note that there are a range of fixed costs, overhead costs, which are much harder to manage within income limits. But in terms of the variable costs, we can see that every effort is being made to respond to the environment that they are experiencing there.
And just while you were speaking, you got a clap from the mayor behind you there. So.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
Thank you. And clearly this aligns to the financial variance report that goes through to council. And in that there's one note that we have made councillors aware of, being that the fees was an increased. There was an error in the fees budget for this current year, which inflated the membership fees by 400,000. So where this report is based on the budget, which is accurate. That's wrong. It says the budget for the facility is 270K in terms of positive. If we address the 400 over budget error, we're actually aiming for a loss of 130,000, which sounds not ideal, but the prior year's loss we were aiming for was a loss of 690,000. So we're getting there, and it's unfortunate that this budgeting error has happened, and it will clearly flow through until the end of the financial year.
Yep. But certainly tracking in the right direction, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yep. Any further questions, councillors? No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we need to receive it? Okay. Could someone please move that we receive that report? Councillor McMillan, Councillor Wilson, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Okay. This time, page 20. Mark, are you coming forward to, and Neil? Welcome. Anything you would like to add, or do you just want to take questions?
No, just take questions.
Take questions? Councillors? Councillor Cameron.
I have a question with regards to page 29, just to help me understand it. The 30-70 split for street cleaning, last paragraph on page 29 of the report, the investment report. The split is completed through the maintenance payment certificate. What does that mean, the street cleaning?
Subsidy for street cleaning isn't, the full cost isn't subsidised, so only 30% of our total cost is subsidised, so that's across the whole country. So it's an assessment that was made a number of years ago on the effect of cleaning curbs and channel against the benefit for the pavement next door, and it's been determined that 30% of it is that. So that's what we get subsidy on, 30% of the cost. Say it costs $100,000, $30,000 of that gets a subsidy. The other 70% we pay as unsubsidised. That's full cost to council.
Because it's assumed that you get an extra benefit beyond the.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
it's got was tested, meaning, what does that mean? Was tested.
Well, it showed that we're only claiming that 30%. We weren't claiming
we're doing
any
it
more than that.
correctly.
So yeah, we're doing it correct. Yeah,
It's unusual.
it's
right?
a lot of people get confused with that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mary, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I just sort of, overall, in terms of the report, there's a few comments in there around improvements required, except for the one area, and there was some mention of conflicts of interest, and there seems to be there was in one area a little bit of disagreement between the auditor's views and management's views. So I was just wondering if you could give us a bit more context behind some of what's going on in there. Obviously, it's a large area. The auditors there are seeing what happens in most local authorities. So just keen to get your flavour on what the Tony Pinn and his team really thought of how good or not we were in some of those areas that they've pointed out, especially in 3 areas where they've said we do need some improvement.
Yeah, it'd be unusual not to have some improvement on some areas. So 2 or 3 of them are sort of technical ones, and there was one there that initially had significant improvement, and that was because there are 3 or 4 different things for procurement that were in there that they were questioning. So a lot of it is filling out a form that is required to show that you've considered conflict of interest, and then you've actually done it. And so it's recording that, as well as a couple of other things in there as well. So there weren't seen to be big issues, but there were a number of small issues that led to that assessment. It's unusual not to have some improvement in most of the things. It's interesting for financial management, that was one that had significant improvement in our previous report, but this one wasn't so bad. And we weren't actually changing anything that much. It was just being able to reconcile what we're claiming to what was in there. So overall, they went to me thinking, and one of the big things that contribute to the significant improvement was using GETS for advertising our tenders. So that's government electronic tendering. We use TenderLink, which actually gets out to the industry for the construction projects that we do. NZTA has GETS, and there's been requirements in there for a number of years, but we haven't used it. It seems like a doubling up, advertising the same thing in both, and it's still a requirement. So we've agreed that yes, we will start using that now, and it'll simply be a link to TenderLink in GETS, which seems a bit odd. It doesn't cover much. GETS is seen to be something that's more for procurement of government stationery, and that's how it started out. But it is a requirement to do it, and it hasn't been. They haven't dealt with it that much in the past or required it. They've got to the point now that says, well, we want you to do it. So we've said, okay.
So just to follow on from that, if we use GETS and then have a link to TenderLink, will our contractors know to look at the GETS site for these projects?
They'll be looking at both anyway, but they're all registered to both and all registered to TenderLink. So it seems like a doubling up anyway when they're already registered to TenderLink. And just my previous role at a previous local authority, it was the same issue that got brought up, and Tony said there might have been a reason why it's been the same at both, because of the people involved.
And the conflict of interest, and that's staff having a conflict of interest.
Yep, and one of the things that is having council owning a contractor who's tendering for your work, and it's not necessarily a conflict of interest, but it should be recorded that council owns Ashburton Contracting Limited, and if they're tendering for it, but from an operational and evaluation of the tender point of view, that's not taken into account. So it's just having that recorded is what they're after, rather than there's being an issue with us having a conflict of interest. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mr. Chair. Looking at the with regards to GETS, I think you can also get alerts through it anyway. You sort of sign up for alerts. With regards to contracts audited, the estimate, the let price, the final cost, the estimate is ADC's estimate, or is that the estimate from the auditors? Used in here.
It's the engineer's estimate. So when you
Your estimate.
when the contract goes out to tender, you have an engineer's estimate.
Yeah.
And it was picked up in terms of the evaluation that was carried out. The document that the auditor saw had the lowest price estimate that from the tenders actually received. When you're actually doing the evaluation, you don't know what the prices are. And so the explanation is that when the evaluation is done originally, it is the estimate. When they know what the prices are, they add that in there to see what difference it makes, but it's not recorded that way, and so that's a change we have to make. So once that was explained to me, he was perfectly okay with it, but it's not obvious to an auditor to see it, so we just need to change how we record that.
And I understand that. I also note that a lot of the estimates and the let price, I mean, I think it shows the robustness of the estimates, which must be reassuring from the end of the table.
Yeah, and Tony commented on that as well. He said, and because he went back and sort of reversed calculated it, and he said it made no difference at all, so he wasn't that worried about it, but it's something that should be recorded and clear. Yeah.
Any further questions, councillors?
One more question.
Yes.
With regards to the recommendations, will we get an update as we go through the next 12 months as to how we're progressing with the recommendations, or are they something you can just implement overnight, or how will that be done?
Yeah, most of it we just implement overnight, and it's something that wouldn't necessarily report to council, but it's something that we will, NZTA will be looking at when they do their next audit, and they'll be checking these things.
And how often do they do an audit?
About every 3 years. Yeah.
So you'll be reviewing presumably annually or whatever, just to make sure there's no gap there.
Yeah, and there's some steps in there that we have to do that are an annual thing anyway about, and regular things for every contract, signing off the conflicts of interest and that sort of thing, and exemption to safety audits. So we have to do those and record those all the way through, and they'll choose a sample of contracts next time they do an audit. So they don't go and check everything, but they choose a sample. Yeah.
So as per progress, will you report back to this committee in 12 months with regards to progress on the audit recommendations?
Can do if that's what you wish. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good idea, but they're pretty lightweight.
Can do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that an action? Just get all that to happen.
Yeah. Any further questions? We have the recommendation there on page 20.
I'll move that, Russell.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Murray, you're seconding that? Thank you. No further discussion. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Okay, page 36. Ashburton Contracting Limited draft statement of intent. Leanne's going to take us through that. Happy just to take questions, or have you got something?
Happy to take questions. Just the only emphasis I'd note there is that there's been no changes to prior years other than removing what I've put in the third bullet point to reflect that we haven't got the issue around Three Waters, which could have initially impacted on their business.
Thank you. Murray?
yeah, it was not necessarily a problem, just out of interest. What percentage of ACL's work comes from council?
I think the latest numbers,
Roughly.
Murray, was about 27%.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so it's not the lion's share. It's really up there in the market, fighting for its own workload for 75%. Is that right?
That's correct, and every tender they do win from us is also won in the open market, so there is no work given to ACL automatically, and of their total book, about 27%, so less than a third, is council's contracts.
And water services would make up a fair slice of that 27%, wouldn't they, I think?
Yes, they'll be definitely part of it, but they do win a number of roading contracts as well.
Okay, I mean, it's useful context. Just, and I think I brought this up last year, and we discussed it, and we were happy. But in terms of just the dividend conversation, where the owner, the work mix, and the return management's comfortable with the level of dividend. I know the policy in the papers. I know we talked about that last year, and there were reasons for why it's documented as it is. But just in terms of the way the market's behaving at the moment, the amount of work that's council versus non-council, and the return that council's getting, just a bit of a flavour for how management's feeling about that.
Management's feeling comfortable, Murray. We know that ACL had a record year 2 years ago, and they had a very successful year last year to follow that, and they have expressed to us a tightening of the contracting market, and that those 2 years are not likely to be repeated through the current year. Equally, we know they've got a really solid book of existing work. I think what's happening, they're winning their share, margins are coming under pressure, and so the return is not going to be at the sort of levels that we've seen in the last 2 years in particular, but they remain a very competitive part of the local market, and are returning well to their shareholder.
And running a very successful base out of Rolleston now as well.
Yes, and they have a base in Rolleston. They've also got a workshop in Timaru, and continuing looking at their core business vis-a-vis new opportunities. So they appear in good heart from the way we understand it.
No, that's good. Thank you. No, I concur, and from what I'm seeing, the market is a bit tougher right now, so that's very consistent. Just as long as management's comfortable with the way the interplay between the investment and the return and the market, I think that's quite a lot of comfort, to be completely honest.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you very much. Just commenting on the dividend policy of 50% after tax net return to the shareholder. How long has that same, who am I asking this quickly, Leanne? How long has that policy been in place?
It's been in place the whole time I've been here, but I do believe it changed slightly about 2021. I think they just made a slight change to how they calculated it, but in my time and for the last few statement of intents, it's been in this format.
Been 50% of after tax net return. And then we've got a return of 10% on sums on shareholders' funds.
Sorry, that's the part my brain's gone to. That got slightly changed a little while back, a few years back.
That's right. It did used to be 12. But council reflected on that, particularly as we approached COVID from memory, and the uncertain economy around what we were expecting of a contracting firm through those times, and council resolved to amend it from 12 to 10. Yep.
So
but the 50% has always been there, as far as I know.
Yeah. Do we review that again, or do we keep it at 10, or do we review it? This is a question to the chair, I guess.
I mean, we're open to whatever this committee would like to do, but I would say with the times we're going into it right here and now, and it's not, they're not going to target 10 if they can do more.
Well, that's a stated objective.
Yes.
So if they're not going to target it, perhaps we should remove that.
I think that the stated objective is an indication of the shareholders' expectations of the company. The company will always maximise the return to the shareholder regardless of that, and will be looking to exceed it every year. But we'll always have the market conditions to have to deal with. I think
it does say on point 6, page 44, will be a target of 10% before tax based on the rolling average of the last 5 years. It does actually say that. It doesn't say will be a minimum or will be the best beyond that. It does actually say that is the target.
Yes, and that target is real. And the target is a language that the Commercial Board of ACL understand. They understand what the target is, and they understand that language in an SOI. But when they had their record year 2 years ago, they returned greater than that, because that was the result they had. So and the rolling average does try and give some comfort that there are tough and good periods over the medium term, and that we're not unreasonable about that in the meantime. And the very last thing we would want our company to do would be to borrow to meet some sort of return requirement that simply saw their long-term position compromised. So
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm just raising it up for transparency and for, reliability of the document.
Maybe
Yeah.
next time ACL's in here with us, you could raise that point and
Yeah.
just get their view
Yeah,
on that.
but I totally agree. We don't want to artificially prop it up. That would be
and
terrible.
Mr. Chair, we have just had a message from the Mayor that the 50-50 has always been there.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'm probably following on with that as well. That we need to see that return coming from the company, because it has commercial drivers, but also has drivers as a retaining, not infrastructure, retaining capacity in our local market to do things we want to do. But if we don't have a reasonable target of profit back, it puts them in an unfair advantage to other contractors, and we'll lose the competition because other contractors will leave. So they have to have a reasonable target of return on equity to make it a reasonable playing field for other contractors to enter the district.
100% right, and that's the rationale for having a very commercial construct to the SOI that means that the commercial directors clearly and comfortably understand their commercial role with ACL.
And as we all know, they certainly do not win all tenders that they put into us. So, Any further questions? No. Once again, recommendation there on page 36. Councillor McMillan's moving, Councillor Brahm is seconding. Any further discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Right, where are we going now, Karen? 55. Transwaste dividend. You handling this one as well, Leanne?
I am, and I'll take the paper as read.
Once again, councillors, Councillor McMillan.
Just a question through the chair. Have Transwaste been invited to come and speak to council? I think there was some talk of them coming to just sort of give us a bit of an overview at some stage.
Perhaps I can answer, Mr. Chair. My understanding with a conversation with the Mayor is that the Chairman, Gil Cox, is going to be invited, whether or not an actual invitation has been forwarded to him. Currently, I'm not sure. Carol might be able to answer that, but it's certainly the intention to have Gil come and talk to either council or this committee.
Neil, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, the invitation's been made. It's either through Philippa, or it might have been Philippa, I think. So Carol might not know, but the invitation should have gone for him to come to a council meeting, an open meeting too, I think.
Thank you.
And just further to that, when I go to the regional landfill meetings, they always say that they're happy to come to council and speak to us. So I know they've said that for a while now.
Councillor Wilson.
Yep, I see the dividend number, but is there any? They must have done a 6 month, profit and loss, so do we get any of that sort of numbers to actually see if the dividend is reasonable and fair, or it's because obviously we pay on one hand, pay for our rubbish to go there, and then we get a dividend, and it's easy to make a dividend if you're a monopoly and you don't have to actually report back any financial numbers. So it'd be great to see that. Do we get to see those numbers at all?
I'll take that as an action and follow up because I can't recall seeing it, but I'm happy to present it for sure.
Because it'd be great to understand that, because I'm a big supporter of it, but we have to be careful that it's not just we're just charging our good ratepayers more money for their rubbish, and it's not performing right or no accountability.
Thank you. No further damage.
So I was just thinking that I think we're a 3% shareholder in Transwaste. So that's the scale of our stake in the company. Yeah.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
That information does come through to the regional landfill committee as well. It's usually in public excluded, so I'm not able to share that. But
We maybe could bring
Yeah,
it to
maybe
public
we'll
excluded
find
audit
out.
and risk at some stage.
Yep.
Thank you.
Our
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Our 3% shareholding, is that mirroring our 3% rubbish contribution, or is that a totally different thing?
No, it's totally different. The shareholding was based on a contribution made at the time. I think Liz, I think our rubbish is even less than our stake in the company, and I therefore think it's a better investment return based on rubbish than it would be if it was based on rubbish.
Okay, thanks. That's good, thank you.
And for anyone who's been there, it is a super efficient, well-run operation that, it's very impressive. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. And we also give the equalisation. So, Neil McKean, you can probably explain this better than me, but because of the distance that we are transporting the waste, we get sort of a subsidy back. Is that how you would explain it, Neil?
Yeah, that's correct. The other shareholders agreed to compensate us for the further distance, so we transport our waste, so we get a payment. It's called an equalisation payment.
Through the chair, and we receive that at the end of the year, so we only receive that once, and we treat that as different to a dividend. That is treated as income and received in the year we receive it.
Great, thank you.
We are the furthest shareholder from the physical site. So the Timaru District Council opted to do their own thing in their own district, as well we've opted to utilise Cape Valley in the Huranui district. But all the numbers associated with Cape Valley are dominated by Christchurch and the refuse that they generate. Yep.
Fantastic. Any further questions? Recommendation there? Councillor McMillan.
I'll move.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron seconding. And no further discussion. I'll put the motion that council receives the Tran Waste dividends report. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Is that everything, is it? Yep. Would someone like to move we go into committee, please? Councillor Cameron, Councillor Brahm, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you.